Let's get to it. The U.S. Senate went into overtime late on Thursday night to decide the fate of what was called the skinny repeal of Obamacare. Senator John McCain joined two other GOP senators to vote against the measure, sending it to defeat. Colorado Republican Senator Cory Gardner voted in favor of the failed plan. Patty, I've got to say, this is one of the most interesting seasons of reality TV I've ever seen. I love the characters. They're adding new drama. It's very entertaining. Your thoughts of McCain the Maverick making his appearance late last night?
Well, it's a shame that the reality show isn't set in the Big Brother house as opposed to, say, the White House. This is our federal government at work. But if you're talking about an amazing twist in reality, so Donald Trump, when he was a candidate, talked about how John McCain was no hero because he'd let himself be a prisoner. Well, it was John McCain who held the White House hostage last night when he stood up and was one of three Republican senators who voted against this, and he proved he was a hero that night. It wasn't like he was turning down a great bill. The fact is, the skinny repeal had nothing in it. It didn't have any solutions. It didn't have any fixes for Obamacare. It was just getting rid of it. They hadn't, in 7 years, come up with a plan that was worth voting on. So good for him. Not a huge surprise that Cory Gardner didn't vote against it. I mean, every other Republican senator, except for those three, voted for it. So it would have been nice if he'd listened more to his constituents, but it was no surprise that he didn't.
David, how will Republicans remember this with John McCain? Because I think Patty makes a good point about this bill wasn't this great package they spent years in making. It wasn't hailed as the great big repeal of Obamacare promised for 7 years. So it may go back to the drawing board and come up with something actually far better. But it seems to have taken away a possibility, at least for the rest of this year, for Republicans to say they kept a promise. Is John McCain enemy number one right now in the GOP?
Well, for the people in the Trump cult, they may think that, but they would do better to look at the dear leader. One of the reasons that President Obama was able to get Obamacare passed, certainly built on a foundation of lies and accounting tricks, but he got it passed because he went out and he campaigned for it, and he sold it to the public, and he was giving speeches and had a strong, albeit totally false, message. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You like your plan, you can keep your plan. But he went out and he worked at it. And what has Donald Trump been doing to try to convince the American people? Granted that he doesn't know much about any of the substance of this, but he could have been out there saying at least simple things which are clearly true, like all these bogus figures about how many people are going to lose coverage under any of the various alternatives. 3/4 of them were simply people who would, once you get rid of the individual mandate, stop buying lousy, overpriced insurance they don't want. But instead, Peggy Noonan said in the Wall Street Journal, he's Woody Allen without the humor. Narcissistic, self-indulgent, childish, all his White House intrigue, no communication strategy other than to trash each other. If he were a competent president, he could have communicated effectively enough with the American people so that the Senate could have passed something.
Joey, when I look at Cory Gardner's position, Patty made a good point about there weren't a whole lot of Republicans who are going to vote no on this, but he kind of gets to have his cake and eat it too. He votes yes, so he goes, hey, I voted for a repeal of Obamacare, but it loses, so it doesn't necessarily, at least at this point, get stuck to him as a policy that he has to defend. Do you think that is the situation, or am I reading it wrong?
Well, no, I think you're reading the situation absolutely correct in the moment, but Cory doesn't run again until 2020, and a lot of things can still happen between then and now. I'm just a little bit stunned by all this because Republicans have had 7 years to come up with a plan, and it acts like they're drawing it up in the dirt starting last week. And I agree with what Dave said. Where's Trump on this? This is Trump's signature problem. Problem and promise. That, he told us he was going to do this. He told us he was going to build a wall, but it looks like that wall is going to get built before Republicans can pass a health care plan. But maybe we've seen politically, and maybe they've seen in Washington, we'll see, that they can't afford a new car. So maybe let's fix the car that we have and make do with it. So we'll see. I don't think Corey's going to pay a price. Corey's been really good, as has Mike Kaufman been, of embracing Trump when he needs to embrace general Republican values and distancing themselves from the man. And if things go forward in the direction that they continue to go forward, you know, they're going to be pioneers, because I think a lot of people are going to be distancing themselves from Trump between now and next year's midterm election.
Justine, after the vote was made, a speech by Mitch McConnell said that, you know, he thought the people on the other side of the aisle would be celebrating. And then when Chuck Schumer began to talk, he said, we're not celebrating, but we are relieved. Democrats in Colorado, as they see this issue, they've been fighting for a while, are they celebrating or are they relieved?
I think it's relief, definitely. The idea of just the skinny repeal, taking away and going back to what we came for before the ACA is not where we need to go. Are there problems with the ACA? Definitely, and there needs to be talk, and there needs to be bipartisanship working together to build something better for the American people. So I think it's definitely relief. We have more time, and maybe by some miracle, so we'll work together and work to make this a better bill for a lot of people and fixing up the healthcare issue. But I don't think it's celebration. It's definitely relief for us.